A viewer is sponsoring today's video because they want to know if a $129 Squier guitar sold on Amazon is any good. A viewer sent me a gift card to Amazon and asked me to buy this Squier debut, and they asked me to review it. Okay, so let's go ahead and order it from Amazon. Okay, somebody's at the door, hold on. Oh, so that took no time at all. Okay, so let's get into the geeky stuff. Before we get started, we'll be donating this guitar to a local school or an after-school program so some kid can get a great guitar, and I'll make sure to set it up and restring it for them. We just recently did a video with a Firefly guitar. That guitar went to Gridley Middle School in Tucson, Arizona for their after-school guitar program. We like to keep these guitars in hands of new players. So what we have is a poplar body. It is a satin finish polyurethane finish on there. It feels very nice, but it is, like I said, it's a hard finish. We have a plastic nut. It looks like a unfinished neck, but this feels very nice, very nice. So we have a maple neck, poplar body. This is Indian Laurel fretboard, 21 nickel frets. We have a 25.5-inch scale length, so standard for a Fender Stratocaster. Immediate thing I notice is the body thickness is thinner than a standard Stratocaster. The body is 40 millimeters thick. So for reference, a standard Fender Stratocaster would be 45 millimeters thick. So it's 5 millimeters thinner than a standard Stratocaster or a typical standard Fender Stratocaster body. We have a 6-screw tremolo bridge. You have 3 single coil pickups. Again, we'll get into all that. Something we've noticed a lot lately on these inexpensive import guitars off Amazon is a lot of the fretboards have been super flat, like 20 inches radius flat. So I'm curious to see what Fender decided to do. I would imagine it's 9.5, so I'm gonna start there. So you can see right here, we have a 9.5-inch radius fretboard. So keeping it very Fender, I think instead of trying to do something different, I think Fender is trying to say, hey, look, this is how you get into the Fender lineup. This is sometimes referred to as seeding, right? So like seeding. In other words, get a new player onto your brand, you know, play this guitar and have a good experience. The tuning keys are standard tuning keys, not the typical tuning keys we see on this price point. These are much better, but this has been a thing for the last easy 5 years. You're seeing much better quality tuners. Tuners have gotten super inexpensive. Like I said, there was a time where a set of tuners like this, the cheapest you could find some aftermarket was $40, $50. Now you can find these for $8.60. You have the designed and backed by Fender, and then a serial number, and then of course this is crafted in China or made in China. Unlike a lot of the Fenders that are made in Indonesia, this one's made in China, obviously for other price point. We have a flat sawn maple neck. It is a one-piece neck, and it is done very nicely. No discolorization. It's hard to pick on aesthetics on a guitar like this because, you know, it's $120, $119. We have on the headstock, we have Squier by Fender and Stratocaster, and then we have one string tree, which is my favorite. I usually don't like one here, but I always like a string tree. Some people have different opinions about this. So let's see how they set up the guitar out of the box. So like I said, this came straight from Amazon to me, very quickly I might add. It was like a day. Let's check the action. We're gonna go ahead and, well, first let's see if the neck is straight. So we're looking here, the neck has quite a bit of relief. So we're pushing down on the first and last fret. We're tapping somewhere on the 12th fret to see how much play is in the string. There's a good amount of play. So the neck has a good amount of relief. And checking the action, we are at 2.75 millimeters, 2.5 on the high E, but 2.75, so almost 3 millimeters. It's 3 millimeters where I get a little nervous. You know, that's where you can have some intonation issues when you push down. But feeling it and that action, I mean, a beginner could make this happen. We'd like it a little lower. Truss rod, let's check the truss rod out. Okay, a couple things that are important to mention right now. There is a dual action truss rod in this guitar. What that means, if you turn the truss rod counterclockwise, not only can you give the neck relief, you can actually force it to have relief. And when you turn the truss rod clockwise, you can give it a back bow. So in other words, this truss rod can make this neck dead straight regardless of the type of strings you're using or even the environment you're putting the guitar in. This is a great truss rod for a guitar at this price point. Now I'm going to check the nut to see how they cut the nut slots. This is very important for those bar chords. I'm pushing down with my ring finger on the 3rd fret. I'm tapping on the 1st string to see how far the gap is. There's virtually no gap on any of the strings except for the low E, just a little bit of play. But that bar F chord still feels pretty good. Let's go ahead and check the frets. Now, normally there's two ways to do that. We can play each note, which we do, or we use a fret rocker. I like to use a fret rocker on the lower price guitars and just play the notes on the expensive guitars, because the expensive guitars don't tend to have high frets. And so I just want to hear if there's a little bit of sizzle, where this guitar, if it's going to be bad, it's usually going to be bad. So let's go ahead and check the frets. There is no high frets. Now, I've said this before, usually when doing anything, you want to do it in the playing position, but obviously for filming purposes, it's just easier for me to put on the bench. Keep in mind, most of the factories are doing the work on the bench as well, but you can, I prefer everything in the playing position. I'm just double checking. There's not a high fret. This is fantastic. The frets do not feel gritty. The strings though are crusty, but the frets feel fine. Let's go ahead and do the sock test. I'm taking the strings off, but I just realized, some of you might be curious. I'm showing this is 9 to 42 gauge strings is what it came with. All right, let's start with the treble side. It's a little rough. So this one does not feel as bad as it looks, but obviously by the looks of it, I would give this, a 2 or a 1, but feeling it, it feels like a 2.5. Let's do the bass side, and it feels about the same. And it looks about the same. So again, a 2, because it didn't actually physically tear. Well, it did right there, look at that. It tore the sock right there. So 1.5. We're gonna go 1.5. So I know what you're thinking. What if I get this guitar and I'm playing it and I'm feeling it kind of scratching the sides of my hand because the frets is sprouted. This is what's called fret sprout. The frets don't do anything. They're metal. They stay the same length when they were cut. The problem is they were cut to the width of the neck, and then the neck has dried and shrank. So as it's pulled in, the frets are now longer. First of all, with a guitar like this, I definitely always say hydrate the guitar first. In other words, use some fretboard conditioner. Put some fretboard conditioner on the guitar. If you have a humidifier, maybe put a humidifier on the guitar for a day or two and see if that will address it when it's minor like this. When it's major, most likely you're not going to hydrate enough, but you can still give it a try. The other thing you can do is, if you don't have a humidifier, do not take it physically into the bathroom, but when you take a shower in the morning, especially like a hot shower with steamy, take the guitar, put it in the bedroom, and make sure the door from the bathroom is open to the bedroom so that the steam can go in there, and that this guitar, the wood will find it. In other words, the moisture will find the wood will find the moisture, and that can help it a little bit too. And if none of those work, you can always polish the fret ends. I have a ton of videos on how to correct fret ends, all kinds of ways, from the easiest way to the hardest way. It's super easy on a guitar like this, and so I will put links to those videos down below. I know some of you are going to be, what about the weight? The weight's going to be light. Poplar is a light wood. Obviously making it thinner is going to make it a little easier. The weight, 6.48 pounds. Super light. I mean, that's perfect. The way I look at a guitar for a child, think of it like a gallon of milk. A gallon of milk is about 8 pounds. If you can picture a kid picking up a gallon of milk and they seem to be fine, then an 8-pound guitar is fine. But if a gallon of milk seems a little heavy, then an 8-pound guitar is gonna be heavy. So 6.5 pounds is very light. It makes a huge difference. Very impressive. I know a lot of you want the measurements because that lets you know how the guitar is gonna feel, approximation, and neck carve. So let's go ahead and do the measurements. So we'll start with the nut. So starting with the nut width, we are at 1.654 or 42.3 millimeters. So a little more narrow than a typical Fender guitar. So not much, but just a little bit. 42 millimeters wide, just for reference. A Fender Strat would be about 1/11/16, about 43 millimeters wide. So 1 millimeter, not as wide. Let's go ahead and look at the 12th fret. Looking at the 12th fret, we're at 51.83 millimeters or 2.040. Okay, let's look at the thickness. The first fret, 21.40 millimeters or 0.842. Looking at the thickness of the 12th fret, we are at 0.900 or 22.86 millimeters. Let's take a look at these frets. Looking at the frets, The width, 0.097 or 2.47 millimeters. Looking at the fret height, 0.040 or 1.01 millimeters, which would make these frets medium jumbo size frets. So they're definitely medium gauge, but just a little bit bigger. Now that's a pretty comfortable neck. It's going to be on the smaller side. It's going to feel very comfortable. Let's go ahead and look at the neck carve. I already know where it's going to land out. I'm going to say a 92 Fender Strat, which is a very modern neck carve. We're looking at a 92 era Strat, which is a very small Strat neck, very comfortable. Not only is the neck comfortable, it's slightly rolled on the edge on the fretboard. It's not a huge amount, but it's a subtle amount and feels pretty comfortable. This guitar feels different than any inexpensive Bullet, Squire, or any of those kind of Starcaster guitars that I've ever put my hands on. This guitar feels like this is Fender really attempting to make a really good entry-level guitar. I mean, this hands down everything I've ever reviewed. The Glaries, all those other guitars that were $99 below. I did one that even had $99 that had stainless steel frets. This is hands down better than all those. Let's take a look at the insides. I think that's where a lot of people are going to be curious. First thing we see is the cavity. It's routed for a humbucker, single humbucker. There's no shielding in here. There's no shielding tape or shielding paint. In an entry-level beginning guitar, I don't know why they would spend the expense, because that's mostly to help you when you're performing live and maybe sometimes in the studio if you have atmospheric noise. But for a guitar like this, you don't have to worry about it, but it's a nice upgrade. I'll put a video link down below to a video if you want to learn how to do that. Looking at the electronics, you have a basic 5-way PC board switch. These are fine switch. Obviously, this guitar is very inexpensive. This switch could last you 10 years. It could last you 10 weeks. When you have a switch like this, don't try to bend it. If you bend it sideways like this, if you flex it too much, they can start having problems because they're very inexpensive. They're not like a mechanical switch that's much stronger. But don't go out and replace it right away, unless, of course, you're going to really upgrade this guitar for some reason. There's no reason to. Then you have three 250K potentiometers. These are small dime-sized potentiometers. There's nothing wrong with them. Potentiometers work or don't work. This potentiometer is on the less expensive side. Yes, it's not a Bournes or a CTS pot, but it's fine. It works great as long as it's not crackling, which you could clean it. And if you replace them with better ones, most cases, I'd say 9 out of 10 guitar players can't hear the difference. It's not something that's going to have an immediate difference. What it can do is give you more high-end frequencies, because cheaper components tend to have more resistance. More resistance kills highs. This is not a guitar that needs more highs, so I wouldn't worry about it. You have a capacitor right here. What they're doing is they have a capacitor here, and then they have these two potentiometers are the tone controls, and they're sharing this capacitor. That's another common way Fender does it. Looking at this wiring, it looks like they have this tone control going to the bridge and this tone control going to the neck and middle, which is the more modern wiring layout for a Fender. So they did a modern wiring. That's great. Then looking at these pickups, we see that they're ceramic magnet pickups. This is my favorite subject to talk about. This is where I bet you if you watch 10 other videos of this, they're all going to say, oh, ceramic magnets are junk. Ceramic pickups, oh, if it only had Alnico. First of all, ceramic is just a type of magnet. It's not cheap or bad. Guitar pickup builders like Bill Lawrence and Larry DiMarzio pioneered using ceramic magnet. It's in expensive pickups now. It's in highly desirable pickups. P90s that people covet, a lot of them have ceramic magnets. We just did a review of a guitar that's $1,800 that had ceramic magnets in its pickups. So the ceramic part of the pickup is not bad. Why people shun it is because a traditional Fender single coil pickup would have 6 individual Alnico slugs. In other words, these slugs are the magnets, and there would be nothing underneath the pickup. Now, it probably sounds like I'm defending these pickups. I'm not. They're definitely inexpensive pickups. I just don't like when people use certain buzzwords to say something is bad without actually looking at it. We're looking at the bridge pickup, and this is metering at 5.10K. That's the resistance. If you watch this channel, you'll know that most single coil pickups, even the 50s era ones, will be a little hotter than this. They'll come with more wire. Somebody's going to say, oh, these are really hot because they're ceramic. That's not how that works. The magnet only is one factor. Ceramic magnets are like Alnico magnets. They're in different numbers. There's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you name it. And the higher the number, generally speaking, the brighter the magnet. They could be using a lower number ceramic magnet, and therefore it could sound warmer. We can look at the inductance. The inductance on this is very low, 1.28. Some of you might want to know what it means when I'm giving you the resistance and inductance of the pickups. The main reason I'm giving you the resistance, the DCR, is that generally speaking, the higher that number, the more the highs will dissipate, they'll be less pronounced, and you can drive the amp a little harder. Now this is generally speaking, and there's a lot of factors why that wouldn't make sense, but that's why I give you a reference of every video. Now the inductance is also another number that tells us something. The higher that number, the more low end you'll see in the pickup, and it will have a smoother, rounder sound. Now again, this is generally and not always the case, which is why I want to do it in every video so you can reference it as you go through each video. So what did I learn from those numbers that I just showed you, considering I haven't played the guitar yet? Well, with a low DCR, I'm expecting the pickups to be very clear and have more of a top end sound. Also with a low inductance, again, I'm expecting the pickups to not have a warmer, rounder sound, but a brighter, clearer sound. So in other words, these pickups are going to be very bright. Now this is the important part of this. These are just some factors that matter. That's why I'm just giving you some basic stuff in every video so you can get an idea of what you're hearing when you hear it. In other words, did it make sense? Did the numbers line up with what the pickup sounded like? That's for you to decide. If you're enjoying this video or you've learned something, give it a like because that helps share it to somebody else. And if you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and hit the subscription button. Let's look at the middle pickup. The middle pickup coming in at 5.09. It makes sense. They're going to have these about the same. And the neck pickup, 4.89. We would say vintagey, right, for their output. They're actually not that high output crazy. Let's look at that inductance on these. On the neck, 1.13. Again, very low. 1.19 on the middle, again, very low. So it is possible that Fender had these pickups designed or are using these pickups because they replicate the Fender 50s Strat tone. They're not the same components, but they might achieve the same results. We'll have to see in the playthrough. Okay, well, like I always say, none of that matters unless it doesn't play great or sound great. Let's talk about a few things. First thing that you should know if you're new to the channel is that I usually take about a month for a guitar review. So this guitar came in August and you should be seeing the video by late September, early October. I spend time with the guitar every day. Every day I try to pick it up, I play it a little bit, get a sense of it, and try to give you some actual input that makes sense other than just reacting to something fresh out of the box. Let's get into it. I'm running through a Yamaha THR-30 and we're gonna start with the neck pickup on the guitar. And we'll do a clean tone. Here we go. So first critique that I wanted to share with you is that the tremolo arm is really sloppy. It's really loose in there. There is a spring you can buy and you can drop it in there and that will make it much better. Some people will wrap the threads with Teflon tape. You can do that as well, although I find that makes this tremolo not much different than if you just really crank it down really tight and it doesn't move. Putting the spring in there will allow the tremolo arm to still swing a little bit out of your way and still pull it up, but not have the play. If you don't want to spend a few bucks for those springs, you can use a pencil eraser, a little rubber eraser, kind of figure out what works and understand that once you stick it in there, it's going to be really hard to get it out. So kind of do your planning accordingly. Those two things would help the tremolo a lot with that play. We're going to go to the neck and middle position. Let's go to the middle position, and this is a good time to talk about tuning stability with the tremolo. How is that working out? So let's go ahead. I mean, look, this isn't going to be an Eddie Van Halen guitar. You're not going to be able to dive bomb with this. It's going to knock it right out of tune. Without a new nut, that's the biggest issue is this plastic is obviously soft, and so the strings are going to bind in it no matter what you do, unless you use some lubrication. You can use lubrication in nut slots. That'll help a lot, but a new nut, and it's just not worth it. I mean, obviously for tremolo, it's a sensitive tremolo, so it's great. This came stock with it decked against the body, which is how I would prefer it, and I appreciate that they're doing it that way. That's the best way to do it. So in the middle position, I mean, it's... I mean, it sounds great. Now we're going to do the bridge in middle position. Sounds great. Bridge, not very common in the clean position, but of course, having the modern wiring where the tone control is dedicated to the bridge, that's just, to me, it's sweeter of you. Let's switch it over some overdrive. Let's go to the neck pickup. Okay, the middle and neck position. Some thoughts about playing the guitar, observations. It does come with a Fender Play lesson program. You get 2 months free with the guitar. But of course, if you don't remember, I guess, to shut it off, they start charging you, but still you get 2 months of lessons. That's pretty cool. Guitar-wise, intonation, slightly out. Frets, slightly rough. And playability is fine. It's a good guitar, surprisingly good for $119. I sometimes feel like these price points give guitars passes, like, you know, oh, for 120 bucks, how could you go wrong? Would I recommend this guitar over just spending a few $100s more and getting something much nicer? No. I mean, the point of this guitar is someone who's extremely conscious of the fact that this is not something they know if they're going to be into. So can someone buy this guitar to see if they like guitar and play it for a month or 2 or 3 or 4 and only be into it for essentially $120? Absolutely. Yes, this is much better than what I learned on by far. This way better than my JB player with way higher action than I started with, when I started playing guitar. The second thing is this a moddable platform? In other words, if you're interested in trying a certain, trying out ideas, maybe working on frets, refretting, doing that work. We talk about these guitars all the time. They're great for aspiring home hobbyists that want to learn to repair guitars or modify guitars. Is this a good platform? Yeah, actually, I think it is, because I really like the fact that the body's thinner, like the old Bullets, which is a body I always liked. It feels like an SG, really, really thin, feels good. The neck is the biggest part. This neck feels great. The question is how long will it last? It has a 2-year warranty from Fender, and let's be honest, at this point, with a good truss rod, these guitars are fine. The odds of the neck twisting is, it's not much worse than most guitars. So the final thought on this is, yes, it's a really good guitar for $119. Although I always come back to this every time. if you're actually watching this video as a beginner trying to start guitar, please consider your local mom and pop stores. Go in there and talk to them, get some advice, get a feel for their vibe. It's just so much much nicer to have a mentor in the beginning of a journey, and instead of just poking on the internet looking for random pieces of gear and random pieces of advice, just having one consistent message with a support system is way better than if maybe you feel like you either don't have those resources or it's not vibing correctly. Then yeah, you have a viable option. Take advantage of it. It's really cool. Watch my videos, learn how to fix this guitar up, and you'll have a great guitar. On that note, thank you guys so much for your time. To the next time, know your gear.